prior to the age of the internet, a criminal wanting to steal money from you would approach you with a gun or a knife and basically say, your money or your life. In the current age of the internet, things have changed dramatically, where prior to the internet, the approach was physically to demand something from you. In the age of the internet, the approach is to convince you and psychologically take your money away from you. As a result, we've seen a major increase in the amount of crime that takes place, and particularly crime that takes place over the internet and the telephone. Now, criminals really don't have a preference in terms of who they want to target, other than target somebody who has some money. Any amount of money will do. And as a result, the largest group of citizens who are impacted by this type of theft are in the age bracket of 25 to 45. That said, seniors become a very attractive group. So let's take a look at why seniors. What is it about seniors that make them attractive to the con artist? Well, generally, seniors have some form of a nest egg. They also have good credit. So looking at a senior, there's something that's pretty reliable. Going after somebody much younger presents a problem because they may not have a good credit rating or they may not have very much money. Secondly, seniors are very prone to responding to emotional pleas. So this is where a number of the scams, such as the grandparent scam, become very effective. Seniors grew up in an age of trust and civility. We basically reflect our parents' values, and as a result, we tend to trust people. We are folks who will give other folks a second chance. And we try to treat people as we want to be treated. And that works to the advantage of the con artist. Seniors are less likely to report fraud, whether it's embarrassment, whether it's because an attitude that, well, I should have known better. Fraud isn't reported by and large by seniors. Seniors are also quite often poor witnesses, and that may be just an issue with memory lapses, or it could be an illness such as Parkinson's dementia or Alzheimer's disease. But seniors don't tend to be as reliable as witnesses as one would hope. And then finally, seniors are more susceptible for appeals on products that will benefit them, such as increased mental capacity, performance in terms of physical health. So with those as the likely reasons why seniors are targeted, we have a number that come together, and as a practice of the con artist, they are very effective. Seniors are targeted. Here are a list of some of the major scams that seniors face. We're not going to go into all of these, but we will take a look at the first couple scams because I think they are really the major areas where con artists perform and criminals are very successful. So we will take a look at the top 4 of these frauds. Grandparent scam, one of the most successful. You know, we hear these calls all the time, or we see these emails that say the IRS wants you, call us, or the IRS says you owe money, or the IRS or Medicare want to verify your account numbers. When you get those calls, realize that that's not how government agencies act. And as a result, most people don't fall for that scam. On the other hand, the grandparent scam is extremely successful. And it's successful because of the emotions that it triggers. A call that says, help grandma, I'm in jail and I need bail money. And typically that voice is very muffled. Help grandma, I'm in jail, help. And then being asked questions by the grandparents such as, "Is that you, Jimmy?" So now the con artist knows what the name of the person is that he's trying to impersonate. And there's usually a call, "Don't tell my parents." These scams are effective because very few grandparents don't want to help their grandchildren. And it preys on the emotion and familiarity that family life presents. The second major scam impacting seniors today, seniors meeting a romantic interest in social media or at a dating platform or website. And this happens because of loneliness. Loved one may have passed away, a spouse or a significant other. And as a result, the senior looks for companionship, goes to the internet, and tries to find a companion. Very ripe atmosphere for emotion and for con artists. The major goal of the con artist is to get money. And the primary way is to strike up this relationship. It could last for months and slowly convince the sincerity of the plea for money by saying, "I wish I could come and see you, but I don't have any cash," or "I wish I could drive over to your house, but my car is broken down." And that's usually the first pinch on money. There may be some other ones. And once the con artist has realized that there isn't any more money to be had, they'll break off the relationship. So trying to get the victim to have sympathy, to pay money, and also taking that person off a public site like a dating website or social media and make the exchange a private email exchange, which is much harder to detect. I want to introduce you to one of our seniors who fell victim to a scam. Now, she looks like a very happy senior with her husband in the picture, but Jean fell for a scam called the Jamaican lottery scam. The scam goes something like this. A phone call is received, and the call notifies you that you're the winner of the Jamaican lottery, or it could be any other lottery. In this case, Jean received the call saying that she won the Jamaican lottery and her prize was $7.9 million. Jean didn't believe it. What she thought was, this is a scam, or I couldn't have won. She tells the person, "I didn't buy a lottery ticket, so I couldn't have won." His response was very simple. "You didn't buy a ticket, but we put your name in the system in order to verify how our system works." Jean wouldn't fall for that. She said, "I don't really believe this," hung up. And 2 days later, the person called her back. And this time, again said, "You've won this lottery. You can claim this money very easily." And she said, "Well, I can't talk to you right now. My husband has a doctor's appointment and we need to go there now." A couple days later, he called back. This time when he called, he said, "Oh, how's your husband doing after that hospital or doctor's visit?" So he is attempting to use information that she's already provided and use that information to gain her confidence. These calls went on for several months until she finally broke down and was convinced that he wouldn't be making this effort if it wasn't real. There was a catch. She needed to pay $30,000 for processing fees and transfer. She paid the $30,000. He disappeared. The money didn't come back, and she lost it. That's how the Jamaican lottery scam works. It's a very effective scam, and it also breaks down the idea that scams and con artists work on a single operation or a single call or a single email. They don't. Good con artists, those who are effective, will carry out a scam as long as they feel they can make money on it. We're going to look at another scam, and this is the investment scam. And to do that, I would like you to view this very brief video of how this scam is perpetrated.
Lunch at Bilbo's Barbecue outside of Atlanta. The ribs are hot, the tea's sweet, the table's full.
Good, though.
Local stockbroker Steve Sampler is taking a client to lunch, advising on the menu.
You want to come around here? Will you
This
take
part of
our
the country
order?
is fairly conservative, and that reflects Steve's own advice to clients. Build wealth safely, nothing too risky.
That's it.
But Steve does not take his own advice. Steve recently lost $40,000 in an oil and gas scam, purchasing unregistered shares in non-producing oil wells.
If it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone.
He's right about that. Steve is a licensed professional stockbroker, smart, with 2 degrees, accounting and marketing management. But he was taken in by a con man with a telephone.
Of course, they did say that they really hated for me to miss this opportunity, and I would probably never get this type of opportunity again.
The con used an old trick, scarcity, telling Steve there were only a few units left to invest in and he had to move quickly. He'd make 10 times his investment. Steve did not bite at first, but the calls continued, week after week.
As I began to talk to him more, and of course he knew basically he was wearing me down.
Steve began to know and like the salesman, a big mistake.
Everyone has a tendency to trust people. Once you get to know them, particularly, you want to trust them. You don't want to think bad of them.
It's not going to happen in the first call. It's going to happen after months and months of doing business with that person, that you're going to be endeared to the personality and share intimate things about your life with them. When somebody starts taking you down that personal lane and asking you about memories and asking you about what makes you tick, they're doing what I'm telling you I did, which was set up my arsenal for the close.
The salesman I dealt with, I knew all about his family, his wife, his children, where he lived.
Steve sent $20,000 in and received official-looking securities and did some due diligence.
I talked to the district manager in Dallas. Oh, yes, there are 15 wells out there. Everything was just right in place.
So he sent in another $20,000, and it was gone. The shell company liquidated, shut down by the authorities.
He's your friend, but then one day, he disappears.
Still, how and why does a professional like Steve fall for this?
The older I've gotten, the more risk I'm willing to take for some reason. But I think what that stems from is I'm not where I thought I should be at this point in life. Oh, I'm trying to hit home runs.
Steve, like so many investors, was trying to play catch-up, an all-too-common tendency among mature investors. He wanted to hit one out of the park.
Home runners strike out more often than the base hitters. And that's what happened to me. And that's what will happen to anyone else that is not very careful, especially today.
Now that we've examined 4 of the specific scams that are being used against seniors, let's take some time and look at the techniques and the approaches that con artists use when they're trying to have their scam become a successful enterprise. So how do con artists really work? What's the psychology behind the con? And what are the methods that they will put into play? We call this the con artist playbook. And the playbook identifies a number of very critical points that con artists use. We get our insights directly from the con artists. We listen to tapes, we view videotapes, and those are shared by law enforcement agencies and other groups. And from those, we've learned a great deal about the con artist. These are a series of recordings. They're not one call, it's several calls, and they present to you the kind of arguments and insults and compliments that con artists will use to work their way into you making the decision that they want you to make.
If you don't want to make up your mind right now, that's where I come in. I will make up your mind for you. Anyway, I said I would not call unless it was a rare and definitely undervalued situation. Are you familiar with the $2.5 gold Indian series?
This is enough money for you to go to your grave knowing that you went and did the right thing Go and meet God with a clear conscience. Now, what do you want to do?
Are you stupid? I'm not trying to insult you, but are you mentally ill? Is there something wrong with you that I don't know about? Is there something physically wrong with you? Like, are you retarded? Are you overaged? Do you forget things? Is there something wrong with you?
You'll never, ever be anything. You're going to your grave a loser. A big loser. I think you're terrible.
Variety of different approaches, from insults to compliments. And considering that the con artist in these has only one weapon, only one tool, and that's the telephone, their voice becomes a very powerful tool. Let's take a look at some of the other issues that come up when we deal with cons. And to do that, I'd like to introduce you to a few of the con artists that we are looking at during our investigation. Rocky Smith. Rocky was, I guess, the con artist in the sense that he was a trainer. He ran boiler rooms, call centers for con artists, where he would train people on how to make an effective telephone call and then supervise those call centers. They're called boiler rooms. He made several $1 million in the process before he was arrested. Bart Chamberlain. Bart was a very effective impersonator, and he could impersonate almost anybody from a bank official to a corporate head to a government agent. And doing that, he was able to convince people to part with their money. And we'll see a little bit more of Bart shortly. Steve Michaels. Steve is probably one of the most successful con artists who made his money selling coins. Steve would appear at a coin dealer's swap or a coin collector's meeting in a community. He'd walk around, talk to them, be familiar with them, take down notes about those individuals, and then take down their phone numbers. And after the session of the coin collector's meeting, he would go back to his hotel room and then call the people he met. He'd be very certain not to call professional coin dealers. He would call the amateurs, and he'd be able to recognize those when he was walking around and talking to them. His goal, convince people to buy what he termed rare gold coins. He did sell gold coins. The coins were valued at between $200 and $350. He sold them for over $3,000 each. That's the operation of a con artist. Convince you that something is there that really isn't. But by being a good spokesperson, by being a personable individual, he can win your confidence, hence con artist, and you can lose your money. This is one of my favorite criminals, Jimmy Vitale, who's going to explain a little bit about how con artists operate.
These are dangerous people you are on the phone with. Okay? Make no bones about it. I am a dangerous person on the telephone. If I choose to be fraudulent in my practices, there is nothing that's going to stop me from taking lots of money from people, period, the end. And there are many other people just as dangerous as me.
Jimmy also says there's one thing in common with all of the con artists, and that is to create something that they refer to as the ether, a heightened sense or emotional state. When you become emotionally charged, you kind of lose track of reality and common sense and reason. And that's the goal. Jimmy and the other con artists want you to be excited because you're not thinking as straightly as you would if you were calm and thinking about what you were doing. Here's Jimmy again with another comment about how he operates.
The crush or the kill is emotionally driven. It's not logic. If you apply logic to this concept, it's no. I'm not going to send you my hard-earned money. I don't even know who you are. I know you from Adam. When I wrap that in tons of emotion, that blurs. The logic goes out the window. The emotion kicks in. Now I've endeared you to me. Now I'm no longer the predator on the phone. I'm Jim from New York.
Con artists work with specific persuasion tactics, tactics that are designed to pull your guard down, get you emotionally charged, and build confidence in what they have to say. One of those tactics is to present phantom riches. Now, the phantom riches could be something large, like in this case, a cash award, or purchase of lottery tickets, or a gift certificate or gift card from Walmart. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. Things that say free are things that attract us. So if you see an offer of a free $50 or $100 or $500 gift card, you might respond to that offer because of the word free. So phantom riches, there actually is nothing there. We call them phantom riches because there's no money. It's a ghost, and the con artist is using that ghost to steal your money. Con artists love to profile people. They did that with Jean. They were able to get her to be very trusting, and as a result, she lost her money. And all they did was pick up on a few things that she said where she gave them personal information. And then they used that in their sales pitch to get her to be convinced that they were legitimate. Scarcity is our third area. And here's an example of scarcity.
Now, John, back in 1860 from the Philadelphia Mint, there were 22,675 of these coins minted. Of those 22,000, only 4 have survived. Only 4, for God's sakes. Just 4 remain at this grade.
Now, keep in mind that this is a guy, Steve Michaels, who first went out to the coin shows and the collector meetings and was able to identify people that he might be able to sell something to and convince them that they're getting a good deal. Now, once somebody is convinced, they're not even going to be thinking rationally. For example, as he says in this pitch, there are only 4 of these known in existence. The person that's the objective of this con doesn't stop and think, why would somebody offer me one of 4 in the world when he probably could get a lot more money from a museum or a major coin collector? So people don't think about that. Instead, the greed on their part takes place. I could get something really valuable and I don't have to pay a lot of money for it. So the idea of scarcity, very powerful in terms of getting people to fall for the scams. Social consensus. Social consensus basically is jumping on the train. Everybody wants this deal. You'll be really sad if you don't join in. So trying to get this idea of if everybody's doing it, it's got to be right. And quite often it's done with a close group, such as members of a particular club, or it could be members of a church or synagogue. Here's an example of how the social consensus attack works.
Winters in Maine are long and cold. Snow falls in October, often covering the land through March. It takes a lot of energy to keep the state warm and running in winter. Carolyn Thompson, here with husband Ray, Maine natives, knows that. And that's one reason the two invested $30,000 in an alternative energy company with a new windmill technology.
Green energy was everybody wants green energy, and they're just so hopeful that green energy is going to be the answer to our environmental problems and money problems, and it just seemed to fit the bill.
It sounded too good to be true. It was. The alternative energy company was a scam. There were no new windmills, just a slick-talking con man by the name of James Rivera, who stole from Carolyn and many others.
He was very convincing that he had all the ducks in a row. He had them all in place, had the big names.
The company, Almighty Wind, looked great on paper. Good scams usually do. Carolyn, who volunteers at her church, heard about the deal from a trusted friend, and that was good enough for her. She never really checked out James Rivera or saw whether the investment was registered.
In the case of the Thompsons not only were brought in by their friends who had a common interest in green energy, but they in turn brought others into the scheme. That's how that whole concept of social consensus works. The idea is that like-minded people who have similar interests and who know one another and therefore trust one another become interested in something that might turn out to be a scam, and in this case did.
Carolyn and Ray had hoped the wind energy investment would provide a nest egg for the children and grandchildren. They have learned hard lessons.
I'll be a little more skeptical of investments. Is check with some state organizations to see if they're registered.
As for James Rivera, he was convicted of fraud and is serving a 12-year prison sentence.
Another very effective technique used by con artists as part of their playbook is source credibility or authority. The more important that they can make themselves look, the higher education that they appear to have, brings you more in line with what they want to have you do, and as a result, you fall victim. I said before that we would be looking at Bart Chamberlain again, and this short video will give you a sense of how Bart Chamberlain operated as a con artist.
The tactic of authority is a strong persuader in many scams. The con artist wants to appear to be someone you can trust.
I'd be on the phone with the victim, purporting to be the president of a bank, and in all actuality, I'm at a payphone craving cocaine.
Bart Chamberlain is a convicted telephone con man. Over the years, he claimed to be various vice presidents, bank managers, even FBI agents.
And because he set up the authority from the start with all the trappings, all the fancy titles, he's able to then rely on that to tell the person what to do.
I'm with American Recovery here in Las Vegas, Nevada. The reason for the call, sir, through action from the U.S. Attorney's Office in conjunction with the Federal Bureau of Investigations, subsequent seizures of property and auctions therein. I guess the reason they followed the instructions is because they thought that they were talking to someone in authority, a bank president, an executive vice president of a big corporation, a U.S. attorney, an FBI agent, whoever it was a person in a position of authority. And they didn't, if they believed that I was who I said I was, and they would act accordingly.
Chamberlain would take on any role he could think of to help him make his scams more believable.
Congratulations, you've walked away with the biggest award we've ever given away. Charlie Miller here, Executive Vice President of Principal Marketing. I want to congratulate you personally on your award. Mr. Jones, my last name is Jones too. I'm Mr. Robert Jones from Mobile, Alabama. I'll be coming out to your house personally to take photographs of you. Congratulations.
Even jail walls didn't stop Chamberlain from projecting authority. After his arrest, he used his telephone privileges to make more calls from payphones inside the jail.
The $20,000 I told you about, I did it while I was in custody.
How did that work? That's tricky, isn't it?
Well, basically, I called the gentleman up, collect. I told him I was on my weekend warrior duty as a U.S. Marshal at the local jail. Mr. Jones, this is Jim O'Neill here. I'm calling you down from the county jail. I'm down here this weekend doing my weekend warrior duty as a U.S. Marshal. The reason for the call and the urgency that necessitated I call you over the weekend collect is that I've spoken to our corporate headquarters out in New York and our accounting firm in Los Angeles, and it's my great pleasure to let you know that by next Tuesday or Wednesday, you will in fact receive your cashier's check for $225,000. Now, there is one final amount of business that I have confirmed through our general accounting office in Los Angeles. I want you to write this down. We are going to need you to go ahead and send out $20,000 to cover you for everything that prior to this point has been overlooked.
I had him send $20,000 in cashier's checks to a third party who from there handled it for me.
A scam artist, the economic fraud criminal, will take any role they need to take to get you in a role to do exactly what they want.
Authority is also projected in the sophisticated mailers sent out by scammers. The mailings look very official, very real with their certificates and seals.
Now that you've seen the techniques that con artists use, let's do a little practice. The following is an example of a con artist approach. It is not a real home shopping experience. Instead, this is something that FINRA and the Federal Trade Commission were able to put together using the actor, comedian, Pat Cashman. So sit back, enjoy the presentation, and see if you can identify what the tactics are that are being used in this program.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you that I have never seen anything that we have ever offered here on the Smart Shopping Network that is getting the response we are getting tonight for the Miracle Shim. Look at that. Isn't that attractive? And if you have a chair or a table at home that's a little tipsy, and I bet a lot of you do, there is no better product you can find than the Miracle Shim. Now, look at this chair here. A little tipsy, isn't it? You probably have one like it. But you just slip one of these little beauties right under that chair or table leg that's not quite touching the floor as well as the others, and voila, problem is solved. These are the same shims used in the White House, Buckingham Palace, the Taj Mahal has lots of them, and all of Donald Trump's homes too, every single one of them, and he has a lot of them. You know, Princess Diana, it is said, would not sit at a table until it had been specially leveled with Miracle Shims. She had a guy with her, went with her all the time. He had a bag full of shims. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. You cannot find Miracle Shim in the stores. You just can't. They're not available in stores. They're not available from anywhere but right here, right now, from me. And they're not going to be here long either, believe me. I'm told the hickory now is really selling like hotcakes. So let's take a look at the counter and, whoa, my goodness, over 12,000 sold just since I've been on the air. These sets sold out completely last time we had them on the air, so I'm not surprised by that. We have got Bernie from Normal, Illinois on the line. How are you, my friend?
Hi. I just called to say that I love my Miracle Shims.
Do you now?
I just bought 3 more of them tonight.
Whew, 3 of them?
Yeah, and my neighbor's trying to get through to you right now to buy some.
Well, you better hurry, because I'm told the cedar just sold out.
I bought one for my wife. Our anniversary's coming up.
Well, your wife has herself one thoughtful husband.
Yeah, well, you know, it sure beats buying a new dining room set.
Well, thank you, Bernie. And, you know, he raises a very good point, folks. New dining room set? Several $100s for only 5 easy payments of $9.98. As the kids say, that's a no-brainer. But I'm being told now the Miracle Shims are all sold out. They are all gone, except, you know, for this one here under the chair. Oh, wait a minute, I just thought of another one we've got right under the table here. We'll sacrifice that, but you better call now before it's gone too.
While a bit humorous, that presentation that Pat was doing illustrates a number of the techniques of con artists. First of all, you have somebody who's dressed in suit coat and tie, which gives him the presence of authority. He did a lot of name dropping too. He had Donald Trump's name, Princess Diana, Taj Mahal. So he attempted to build on reputation of other people. We also had a matter of social consensus in the number of orders that appeared and kept increasing. And then the idea of scarcity, as was conveyed by the clock timing down on how long this offer would be available, and also on the availability of the different types of shims. So as they disappeared, there was more urgency and trying to drive more sales at that point, exactly the way a con artist would work. So you've now had a fairly good example presented to you, gives you some sense of the reality of con artistry. And by the way, we're not making any comment here about Home Shopping Network or any of the other online sales promotions and programs. They are legitimate. This one was created to put you in a familiar environment as you were watching the examples. So what can you do to prevent from being a victim? And that's really the final part of our presentation today. Well, there are some key strategies that we would like you to consider. First of all, if you're making a buying decision, it doesn't have to be a big item. Give it some time. There are rarely situations that you will find where something is so limited that you have to respond now. Con artists try to push that. Scarcity, limited amount of time, buy it right now, or make your donation right now. Essentially, we're saying, take the time to think about it. You may lose out on a deal, but you also may lose out on a great opportunity to be scammed. Secondly, ask questions. We find that in their course of business, con artists ask a lot of questions and basically try to build up a file on their intended victim. We also know that the intended victims and typical American consumers don't ask enough questions about the products they're buying or the offers that are being made to them. Third, read about whatever you're going to spend money on before you spend money. Don't take the word of the salesperson. Check some independent sources. There are several of them out there, but organizations like the Consumers Union, Consumers Reports, or the Better Business Bureau. Develop a refusal script. How do you say no? How do you tell the person, I'm not interested? Well, one way is simply hang up the phone. But if you're not really at that point where you feel, oh, I can just hang up. And again, remember, we come from an age of civility. It's very difficult for some people to hang up the phone, but it may be easier to come up with a script. Here's an example of a refusal script.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Here's another example of a refusal script.
I'm sorry, excuse me 1 second. Hello?
Hi, would you be interested in switching over to TMI long distance service?
Oh, gee, I can't talk right now. Why don't you give me your home number and I'll call you later?
Well, I'm sorry, we're not allowed to do that.
Oh, I guess you don't want people calling you at home.
No.
Well, now you know how I feel.
Jerry Seinfeld. Some other prevention strategies that you can apply. Of all the documents that you have, your Social Security number and now your Medicare number are probably the most secure things that you should have. They shouldn't be shared with anyone online or on the telephone. If you receive a call from the Social Security Administration and they ask you for your Social Security number, don't respond. The only time you should be putting that number into any document is if you're the one who initiated the communication and you're communicating with a reliable source. In other words, you know that you are talking to Social Security, the IRS, or a credit card company. Otherwise, don't provide information. That's one of the key ways that con artists are able to steal. Monitor your bills and financial accounts. Here you're going to be looking for abnormalities. You're going to look for things that appear as a bill that you never purchased, or changes in financial accounts or bank accounts that you didn't anticipate or you didn't order. If you're going to invest money, go to smartcheck.gov. That's a federally operated source of information about investments, investment agents, and on the companies that you're investing in. You can also contact your state investment authority. In Vermont, it's referred to as the Department of Financial Regulation, which handles banking, insurance, and investments. Watch over your credit reports. You can request them. The best place to get them from is www.annualcreditreport.com. You can also get them by making the phone call to the number 877-322-8228. This source is one that's sanctioned by the government and will not try to sell you something. You can also pick up credit reports from organizations and credit bureaus like Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And although they may be free, they also may come with a little catch, like a sales pitch. So your best bet is go to annualcreditreport.com. If you're a Vermonter, you're entitled to 2 copies of your credit report a year from each of the credit bureaus. If you're not a Vermonter, you're entitled to 1. And I would suggest that you make your request and stagger the individual reports. Don't have them all come on one day, but stagger them through the year. Activate credit freezes. If you have credit cards, it's very easy to do that with the individual card, but the better way to do it is to contact the credit bureaus and tell them you want a freeze. Credit freezes are free, and in effect what they do is they make it difficult to establish new credit accounts. They do not impact on your current credit cards or loans. You still have to pay them, but somebody stealing your information and then attempting to open a loan or credit card will be shut down by it. So contact the credit bureaus. Protect your PINs and passwords. PINs and passwords are the keys to your accounts. It's not necessary to always change them regularly. It is important that your passwords have some length to them. We know that an 8-character password is very easy to break by using a computer. The better thing to do is increase the length of your password. 12 is better, 16 is very good. The best is actually 34 characters, but very few people want to remember that or deal with it, because you should have a unique password on each account. Of course, one way you can do that, purchase a piece of software that provides for a single access password. 1Password is an example of one of those, but you can search those out on the internet. If you have items with account numbers on them in paper, shred them. Don't recycle them. Con artists are very good at dumpster diving and particularly into recycled documents. If you have accounts with their numbers on the documents, credit card numbers, you're providing the criminal with a lot of information. Protect your information online. In other words, don't share a lot online, and in particular in social media. You can protect your mail. If you are tired of receiving repeated advertising from legitimate companies, let's say you once owned a Honda, you got rid of the Honda, you now have a Toyota, but you keep getting advertisements from Honda, you may want to go to opt-out pre-screen or DMA choice and register with them to have those advertisements discontinued. You also may want to be sure that you're registered for the Do Not Call list. Now, Do not call gets a pretty bad rap from the public, and that's because most people don't really understand what do not call is all about. Do not call is designed to stop legitimate companies from using robocalls to notify people of sales or their activities. Do not call is not designed to stop charities, political organizations or candidates, or for that matter, criminals. As far as a criminal is concerned, they're trying to break the law anyway. So breaking the law by making a phone call, using a robocall, and violating the do not call regulations doesn't really concern them. You can go to do not call either online or you can do it on the phone. And if you do it on the phone, you need to register the phone that you're using to make the call. If you have multiple phones, including cell phones, that do not call block needs to be done separately on each line from those phones. If you are prone to donating, we know that charities pop up all the time, and particularly in times of trouble. There are numerous charities right now that are targeting the Black Lives Matter movement and coronavirus. Before you donate, check the charity that you plan on donating to. And here's a list of 5 places that you can go in order to check the charities. Most of them will give you a couple guidance points. One of them is, for instance, the financial status of the charity. In other words, does that charity actually spend its money on what it says it does, or does it spend it on luxury accommodations, conferences for their employees and leaders, or salaries? The other thing that these usually check is something we call transparency, and that's the ability to look into the books of the charity to see if that charity is doing enough due diligence that the money is being watched when you donate it. AARP has its own Fraudwatch network hotline. You can go to the website, which is www.aarp.org/fraud. If you go there, you'll find a wide variety of pieces of information, including video clips. There's also a phone number that appears here. It's 877-908-3360. That's a fraud hotline, and the fraud hotline is designed to provide people answers to questions they may have, particularly about scams that they think they're being subject to. You can also, on this website, register for fraud alerts, which occur quite frequently whenever there's a fraud coming out nationally and we get word of it. It's posted as an alert to people who register for fraud alerts. There's also a scam map, and here I've kind of focused in on a section of New England to show you how this map appears. It identifies where fraud reports have taken place, and these could be law enforcement reports or they could be consumer reports. So if you click on any of those blue or yellow dots, it will actually go to identifying what those specific scams are. If you're interested in receiving fraud alerts, here are 5 reputable organizations that regularly issue alerts. And you can obtain this information by simply going online and Googling fraud alerts, and you'll probably see most of these there. If not, you can contact me after this presentation and ask me to send you information from the presentation. I'd be happy to do that. If you want to contact the credit bureaus, here are the 4 credit bureaus that operate the most in Vermont. One that most people don't really know about is Innovis, and this is one used by the Vermont State Employees Credit Union. So if you are a member there, or if you have a loan there or an account there, you can check with them and have a credit freeze put into place. And a credit freeze, again, simply stops somebody from looking at your credit account. If at some point you need to use that credit, you need to, let's say, lease a car, do some home improvements, and the bank or finance agency will be doing a credit check. You can lift that credit check for the purpose of that particular event and then refreeze your credit. There are a number of federal organizations that you can go to, and we recommend primarily two of these. The first one, https://DFR Vermont, is the Vermont Financial Regulation Department, which deals with banking, insurance, and investment. And you can call them with any questions on those topics. Another place to contact is the Vermont Attorney General. Vermont Attorney General is very active in fighting consumer fraud. TJ Donovan is spearheading a number of initiatives, and there is a separate department of the Attorney General's office that handles it called the Consumer Assistance Program. The other agencies are federal, and they have different activities. As you can see, Federal Trade Commission deals with identity theft. Federal Bureau of Investigation deals very much with internet crime, and then Medicare crime, which is one of the biggest areas of fraud in the country, counting to about $65 billion a year. Yeah, that's billion. StopMedicareFraud.com. At Fraudwatch, we're trying to protect you by educating, and education is our key. We also invite you to join us as a Fraudwatch volunteer. Volunteers are folks just like you and me who have agreed to take some of their time and to watch out for fraud and then communicate that to others. You can reach me at Elliott Greenblott, which is egreenblott@aarp.org. Be happy to provide you with additional information, and also if you're interested in the notes from this presentation. Thank you.